Welcome back, dear viewers, and still with the breakfast show. And this segment of the show, we're going to be going back in history to talk more about the ancient Egyptian times. We're going to be talking about kinship and marriage relationship during the ancient Egyptians. When did women get married, and was there a divorce? What type of family relationships were there? What was the role of women in the ancient Egyptian family? And also we're going to be talking about the role of the children. And on this issue, we're glad to be joined by Dr. Yasser Kamel, researcher and Egyptologist. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Mr. Yasser. Mr. Yasser, to start with, can you shed light on the family issue of in the ancient Egyptian time, and in particular the issue of marriage? At what age the women and men did start to get married, and what were the procedures here?
Yeah, you may not be surprised to know that Egyptians did not change much.
Oh.
I mean, farmers, or the Egyptian farmers, still, till today, they prefer to have early marriages since they would need manual force for farming. So the ancient Egyptians were exactly like this. So girls would be married, or women married young, 14, 15 years old, and men would be 20 or early 20s.
That's quite early, yes.
That's right. In order to be able to make a family, the family for the ancient Egyptians were the main thing for the society, the nucleus of the society itself, and the core of everything. Mm-hmm. So they had equality for men and women by the Egyptian law. They had equal treatment to the boys and girls. For example, according to the marriage contracts came from ancient Egypt, women had equal rights and the right to run their business, keep their property, and in case of divorce, they would earn.
So they did have divorce in
they had
Egypt
divorces
as well. Mm-hmm.
And we found different contracts on papyrus, and some of them referred that ladies could keep 1/3 of the wealth of her husband after divorce.
Oh.
And if the husband dies, she would have a share from that wealth. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, if the woman herself dies, she could pass her wealth to her kids. Mm-hmm. So they have, surprisingly, they had similar rules to what we have today. Yeah. The Egyptian society had known only one single wife marriage. So there was no multiple.
There was a polygamy. So
they were monogamous, so they had no polygamy. Mm. So they didn't allow more than one wife to exist. Mm. And they had contracts that would sound like what farmers may do today in countryside, like where the bride would have a list or listed belongings, wedding list. Mm-hmm. I mean, she came with certain furniture, came with certain utensils, came with certain jewelry. She would expect the same thing be given back to her in case she's divorced, which could surprise many people.
Mm-hmm. So and how was the marriage conducted? I mean, was it conducted in a temple or by a priest or by a...
We failed to find any document that shows if priests would be invited.
Involved.
But,
so it was a kind of religious marriage or a civil marriage?
Most probably civil marriage.
Yes.
But they still have a ceremony.
Well, we do have some photos here on screen if you
that's
would
right.
like
you
to
see,
comment.
this is Tutankhamun and his wife. And I've collected some of these slides to show that at one point that Egyptians used to prefer to get married to their relatives or their cousins, especially royal family, to be just more specific, royal family for considerations of wealth, ranking. They would favor that they would force.
That would bring me to ask a question, because I did read about the fact that some of the pharaohs did marry their sisters.
Right. I mean, maybe the first choice should not be the sister. It should be a close relative. But if the fate and if there's no circumstances, or there's no good circumstances to get him to marry
a cousin or in-law,
so he had to, or maybe they have to suggest for the pharaoh to marry his own sister. Sometimes with a half sister, like King Tut case. Yeah. Tutankhamun, the famous king that discovered in 1922, they had proven eventually that he was married to his half sister. And
But Tutankhamun did die very young.
he died 18 years old. I mean, of course, marriage for the king was a must.
But he died 18-year-old, and you said that people did
Ancient
start to get married by the age of 20.
Ordinary Egyptians. But royal family members, it's conditioned to ascend the throne. One of the conditions is to be married to a royal family member.
Indeed. Okay.
So the lady was the way to get to the throne. So if he would not marry one of the royal family members, he would not be the full or legal king of Egypt. So he had to accept, or he had to arrange a marriage as early as possible. And maybe he was probably married by 12 or 13 years old. We can see in the museum his own belongings, including his beds, seats, where you can see the seat would not adjust much to a small person, probably 13, 14 maximum.
But we are not quite sure about these details.
No, we're sure because the mummy itself,
No, about the age that he got married and the details.
No, it's not written, but like I said, they found the fetus of their miscarried babies. I mean, the wife miscarried. Maybe she was too young
maybe,
to get pregnant, or maybe any. So we could calculate logically how long the marriage lasted before his death. And so we think that he's, mathematically at least, calculation leads to that he was probably 13 or 14 while married. They have his magnificent gold-plated throne, where he has the wife and himself depicted, dressed their marriage sandals. They invented that tradition for that king only, is to share one pair of sandals between both of the couple. In other words, they were just limping. I mean, so they have one pair of sandals tailored, made specially for the couple.
That's quite.
And
it's not a wedding ring, you know.
Yeah.
And how many family members did an average Egyptian family comprise during that time? I mean, how many children did they used to get?
We have samples of course, we get the knowledge from the stela, from the art, from the carvings. In several sarcophagi, we could see scenes of the father, allowing us to see his children. Sometimes the children could be 14, 15, 17, depends. So the family was a big family because the Egyptians...
So it was quite a big family with 17...
Correct. I mean, a case like Juhudi, he has actually 7 girls, 7 boys.
Okay.
So, because they need their manual force for farming, and Egyptians mostly were farmers, and having family members that allow you to keep going, looking after your property and lands. Same thing with the pharaoh.
Yes. So the average Egyptian, the ancient Egyptian family comprises of how many members?
We think they used to live in a house where they have the parents and the kids.
How many kids did they get?
Like I said, sometimes
14,
like 14, 15, depends.
Right. Okay.
There was a difference here between the ordinary Egyptian family and the royalty.
Definitely,
concerning
yes.
the number of kids.
Correct. The royal family could have more children, but
More
than 14? More children, exactly. And they would be like ramshackle, like hundreds. And they are just classified based on...
Come on, how? Hundreds?
Several wives. So I said ordinary Egyptians. Ordinary Egyptians different to royal Egyptians. So ordinary Egyptians allowed to have one wife. Kings are
It was
different.
illegal to have many wives?
Yeah, for the king was fine, legal to have...
No, for the ordinary citizen.
It was not legal to have more than one wife. But the royal family, they could have hundreds of mistresses, concubines, and several queens.
Okay.
Several queens.
Several queens.
Not only one queen,
Not only,
and maybe other mistresses.
2, 3, 4 common. And because he would have to select from those queens, from his offsprings, from them, the one could be the ideal heir. So he has to be careful. I mean, and also royal family, if they would decrease, and the bloodline terminates, the dynasty will collapse. So royal families everywhere, worldwide.
Who usually inherited the thrones if the king had hundreds of first son?
First son, first queen, being logically first choices, the firstborn son from the queen, unless she had no male,
so
or
they
maybe
go to the other one,
they
the
skip
second
her
one?
and go second choice. And Ramses II, for example, one of the unusual cases, he had selected the 13th son.
13th.
Number
Why?
13. Maybe he was smarter, maybe he was braver, maybe more skilled. He had interviewed others and seen that he made a decision to coronate and enthrone Miriam Petah, his 13th son, and not from the first queen. So not
Right.
from Nefertari.
Okay, regarding women, what was the status of women during the ancient Egyptian times? Did women have her rights? I mean, how was she treated at home as a wife? And I'm not talking about queens. I'm talking about ordinary families.
She was treated the best. I mean, Egyptians, in comparison to neighbor civilizations or coexisting civilizations like the Mesopotamia, for example, the women had been given a lot more rights and almost equality in everything. I mean, ladies made the occupied jobs. Like, for example, if we used to have a priest and a priestess.
We did have that.
We had that at the time. And all marriage contracts refer that she had to sign.
The ancient Egyptian times, because we did not hear much about priestess.
No, we had priestesses. Those priestesses were in temples of gods. I mean, like Amun, Karnak, and so on. So they had occupied most of jobs. And there was no discrimination. You can look at the style the ladies depicted, the linen outfit, the beautiful flowers, the nice wigs they wear sometimes, the jewelry. They look completely updated and modern. Some of their hair fashions and haircut styles is back to exist today.
It was the case all the time, Yasser, or we have seen a change in the status of women throughout the ancient Egyptian different families?
In Ptolemaic or early Greek ruled Egypt, the Ptolemaic dynasty, they started not to insist or force the idea of marriage to family members or no intermarriage. I talk about locals. I don't talk about royal family. Royal family, always there is intermarriage. Otherwise, somebody else will rule one day. You have to force intermarriage for royal family. Ordinary Egyptians in the Greek dynasty and Greek-Roman period, they started to behave differently. They would just go randomly and marry to the ones they like. But in the pharaonic age before, it was the logic choices to get to marry to their relatives first, which could have sometimes the disadvantage of repetitive illness and unrequired diseases or no required disease like club toes, like mummies can show you that the disease is coming and back and so repetitive for the whole family members since or due to the marriage to each other or intermarriage.
So we can say that many of the diseases did occur or the problems did occur because of the family
Intermarriage?
Intermarriage. The good side of it, if they had the right gene passed to the next generation. So the positive and the negative. Negative illness.
It's the probability issue,
exactly.
which is up till now we're suffering from when cousins get married.
Correct.
And I think it's prohibited by law in some Western and in European countries and in the
I
US.
agree, especially if
prohibited.
if it's too close. But if you mean a far relative is accepted.
I mean cousins.
You can pass the good gene to the next generation, so you gain the same skill. And
but you pass both, the good gene and the bad gene.
Or maybe you get the wrong one.
According to the probability, it's the 25% probability that you get a child who is not a very maybe
healthy condition,
healthy or so.
Correct.
Some abnormality.
They would not write about that kid. I mean, the Egyptians would not write about him. I mean, he would not be a king. So now the royal family rules is intermarriage. Then you have a lot of them. Kids are many. And now you go for the one has the right gene and no illness.
If we are talking also about a brother getting married to his sister, so we are talking here about a very high level of
royal family only.
I mean.
To keep a throne. But maybe the kid, the child, may not be the king. From that marriage done between sister and brother is a must to keep the throne for the king. They had a myth, a legend of Osiris and Isis. And Isis is the wife Osiris who had given the throne to her brother by the marriage, and also she allowed her son to rule. So women represent for them the throne. So the way to get the throne is to be married to a royal lady. But locals were not forced to have this. But I think the culture would be similar, that they would be interested to have a relative, a cousin to marry. And the ladies used to call their husband's brother. And a brother used to call his wife a sister for endearment, not for respect, but that would not emphasize they were really sisters and brothers. Sometimes the title sister is a respect and a way to describe the relation to be tight.
Right. What about children during the ancient Egyptian times? Would you tell us more about their lives? How did they receive their education, boys and girls? Did they receive education equally?
Equally. Of course, let's say the farmers' class would not have the same equal chance of education because they would keep them to farm more. But just others than farmers would be giving equal education to girls and boys. I mean, we found scenes of carvings, like in my slides, of girls and boys learning in a school. And they have equal chance, like I said, if the woman is allowed to have a marriage contract and allowed herself to initiate divorce. The divorce right is given to both of them. So a woman could start and request a divorce. And the contracts we found, these say that the man, in some of them, should be responsible to financially look after her. However, she's divorced until she remarries.
Was there any kind of social discrimination against women during that time, during the ancient Egyptians?
Well, I'm not going to claim the Egyptians were ideal, but of course the things allowed us to know were the best part of it.
Indeed. Mr. Yasser Kamel, our Egyptologist, thank you very much for your very interesting input, and always a pleasure to know more about the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Egyptian civilization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming, sir. And dear ladies and gentlemen, with this we come to the end of this edition of The Breakfast Show. Stay tuned for more coming up here on Nile TV International. You are in the company of Niveen Ramzi and Mahisti Rabia. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mahisti.
Thank you very much, Niveen. Thank you, our viewers.